encourage you to use environmental contractors who know what they're doing, who can protect themselves. They're on your property to clean up your property. We don't want them exposed to the chemicals and heavy metals as well. They need to find ways that they're familiar. I guess we have a number of contractors who have worked in Sonoma, and we're up in Paradise just recently, back down, that may be very useful. We have local contractors who can do this work as well. But safety is critical, and homeowners, we encourage you also, as well as your contractors, to use dust masks whenever anything is being moved on your property. If you're trying to sort through or sift through to see if there's valuables that you know are there, protect yourself. You're exposing yourself if you don't have gloves on, if you don't have a dust mask. Wet it down before you do any of your searching would be ideal. You don't want to expose yourself as well. It'd be ideal to have eye protection, safety glasses, especially during the cleanup operation, is to protect the eyes, long pants and long sleeve shirts, or Tyveks like these gentlemen are wearing, disposable clothing, heavy work gloves because there's a lot of nails and glass and whatnot in all that material. Hard hat to protect you against falling or bumping into equipment. The contractors will definitely need to wear steel-toed shoes and boots to protect from puncture wounds. And if you need any hearing protection from the heavy equipment noise, chainsaws or whatever else heavy equipment might be noisy during the cleanup operation. To protect yourself, protect the contractors. This is typical for any of the cleanups that both that we do and private citizens do.
Is there a training requirement for the workers? Last couple of fires in the past
40-hour HAZWOPER. The environmental contractors should have 40-hour HAZWOPER training, yes, for their own safety protection.
But in general, we don't need a HAZWOPER for this work, unlike the earlier, the work that was done 2 years ago.
In 2017, so we required that you had PPE. If you were removing hazardous materials, you would need the HAZWOPER. We tried to make it to where a homeowner, there's a great desire for homeowners, understandably, to clean up their own property. So one of the provisions we put in there was that if you're wearing level of protection for the amount, for the type of waste you're dealing with, but if you're dealing with asbestos, you need someone who's certified to abate that. So yes, you can do your own cleanup, but you do need to wear the protection typical for that. And if you're dealing with hazardous materials, you need to make sure that those contractors have that certification.
Okay.
With regards to that, who, I presume in the work plan you're going to identify your contractor.
Yes.
There'll be a license check of them to make sure that they're a HAZ contractor.
Yes.
And that theoretically they're employing 40-hour workers. With that, who's approving that? Is that being approved through the work plan?
I met.
There's a sample work plan that the county's published, and basically when you're applying and you have your application, you're stating that you're hiring contractors certified to do the work that's being performed. So if the work requires HAZWOPER certification, if it just requires a general contractor's license because there is no hazardous waste component to it, or it's been, so it is in there. And in a sense, you are responsible for whoever you hire doing the work. I mean, we're not checking or running license checks on contractors on your work plan. We're verifying that your work plan basically states you're going to hire someone capable of doing the work to the level that is necessary.
Can I add one thing? As a training provider and a contractor, if you're removing asbestos, the contractor you choose must be DOS registered. and their workers must be asbestos accredited trained,
Yes.
and they must have hazmat.
Yes.
So that's a total of 72 hours of training. So,
Right, and that should be done. The asbestos, before anyone starts work on the site, you know, one of the requirements, and it's stated in our guidelines, is that you should have a CAC go out there and assess it first. If you find asbestos on your property, then that's special abatement, and you have to have a contractor with proper license. We didn't want to spell out every last contingency, but that's the start of the process, is to get the hazardous waste off the property first, and then have the CAC go through to where once, you know, the asbestos is abated and hazardous waste is abated, then you can go through a general cleanup.
Without a hazmat.
Without a HAZWOPER, correct, but still wearing PPE as appropriate, which is generally level C. I mean, with
Yeah.
the mask, with the Tyvek, with the gloves, steel toe boots,
Yeah, okay.
In lots of water.
lots of water.
So Glenn, it sounds like what the US EPA did with their property clearances isn't gonna be required now? Is that correct? That's what it sounds like you're
Well,
saying?
there's a first sweep that is done by the county. It's about 80% done now, I think.
I think it's actually a little over 80.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a first sweep, but as Bob has indicated, it doesn't guarantee they're gonna find everything if the building's collapsed. So if you find that during your initial assessment before you begin your cleanup, you need, to, whether it's asbestos or if it's another hazardous waste, you need to abate that first before you begin.
And then you gotta report it all. So the county knows what you did. It's this final report. So
You just keep receipts?
keep receipts from the landfills, keep receipts from the contractors who did the cleanup work. Yeah, keep receipts and make copies of them. Obviously keep your receipts, but make copies for the county to have for their records as proof that this was done. Your consultant, your contractor's receipts for water installation, asbestos removal, soil laboratory reports. And then include your consultant will have put together a small report on the soil analysis, what he found, that it met the requirements, and we'll stamp that document that says it met the requirements necessary for the screening criteria. Met the cleanup goals. Things that we've found to be potentially problematic is if you've got wells on site or you've got cisterns on site, make sure your contractor knows they're there, because they could fall and hurt themselves. Because a lot of times the structures around them, or sometimes we found them under houses that people didn't even know they had a cistern under their house. Because they had crawl space or it was concreted over. There's just issues that you don't know if you have sometimes, especially if it was a historic kind of house. And I think we've got a mixture of homes out here. Maps, drawings. You just put it all together for the county to be able to say, yeah, you've done it all, you've met the step-by-step process, you've removed all that we need to remove, the soil test met your requirements, asbestos lab reports were adequate, and that you're ready to rebuild. And like Paradise, someone carved this up in Paradise. They coming out of the ashes. Beautiful tree that went down, was burned in the fire, and then made a sculpture out of it. And we're anticipating the same will be true of this part of Sonoma County as well, in the not too near future. Not too distant future, I'm sorry.
Are you expecting the results to be uploaded anywhere, like in Campfire, they're all stored in a database? for individual sampling results? Is the county requiring us to upload it in a certain database on a per property basis or close out reports or anything like that?
No, there will be a map that'll be tracking basically the status of the property.
Okay.
If they've got an approved application and then when they've completed the process.
Got it.
But no, we will not be asking you to upload your soil samples.
On my property, I did not lose the house. I lost a small outbuilding and a couple of vehicles. Am I going to be required to go through this whole procedure?
What size is your building?
I was less than 120 square feet.
So we have an exemption program that we've set up. If it was non-residential, it's less than 120 square feet, and all the debris in it was inert debris, you can qualify for an exemption. The exemption program basically follows the same process, but it's a self-certification. And at the end, you're not required to do the soil sampling.
What does that include if there was vehicles burned?
The
We haven't really talked about that before,
Yeah.
because most of the time, when we dealt with this in private cleanup in 2017, just everything went. I mean, I would, technically, it's not, I don't think it's spoken to. I mean, I would want to still test it, but I don't know if we would require that as part of our program.
Right.
That's,
I don't think we would require it as part of our program, but as, you know,
We'd
Robert
recommend it.
You
was
need to
talking
be aware
about.
that there's
Yeah, the lead
potential
batteries.
contamination there for you. You might want to take some extra soil.
But I can self-certify.
What I would say is you can self-certify, but just to protect you and
Right.
your family and that, it would, we would recommend that you take some soil samples to make sure there's no lead in those batteries.
Yeah,
et cetera,
that's what I'm
in those
doing.
vehicles.
If you use cream to tone the vehicle off, do they know about that stuff?
They're supposed to have it tested before they dispose it in the landfill, so that's where it's gonna come up, is they're not supposed to take it off your property without knowing at least what's in it.
Right,
So-
but they don't know what.
Right, the
Falling
soils
from
is
it,
exactly.
No,
Right.
landfills don't take the cars. Recycle centers will take it. Metal yards will take it.
But to be on the safer side, for the vehicle, what do you do if you get a vehicle, you can use spray, you just want the surface.
All the ash over
Just do the same thing with sampling, set up the fire, and you can just do that.
And that soil is going to which kind of landfill?
I think it could go, there's multiple landfills that are basically listed in that station.
Yeah, to the local landfills that are lined landfills, the permitted lined landfills. The Clover Flat.
Clover Flat landfill is over in Calistoga. And then Central landfill is out, I think the address is Petaluma.
500 Meacham Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Meacham, yeah. So those two are certified. We're still waiting to hear about Redwood landfill in Marin. I think it's certified or it will be soon.
Another important thing I want to mention, I didn't mention earlier, is for your vehicles that were destroyed, you need to report those to the DMV and to your insurance company, so they take them off the records. Otherwise, we've had people get registration, from the DMV. So you need to let them know, there's paperwork to fill out that it's been destroyed. Put in, you need the VIN number for the vehicle, and you should have it someplace, hopefully. The insurance company should have a copy of that for you. So that's important to do. Otherwise, you don't want to have to get registration on a car that is not there.
I'm not sure if they may require you to have like a law enforcement document that.
Well, Alpha Metals won't take those if you don't have a tag for it.
Right.
What I understand from, you have to run it through a certified auto dispatcher, and those are limited. There's only a handful.
Dismantler, okay. Yes, sir.
Is there any information that we can find for, like, responsible land management after all of this is done? Like, in terms of, like, I'm a landscape contractor, like, I want to do be responsible with my land management after all this is done? Is there any information or
You
anything?
want to build, are you thinking you want to have like that defensible space around your home,
Yeah.
rebuild and everything? There is a watershed task force, and then there, in the county, if you go to SoCo Emergency, that site, there's a section for debris removal, but there's also one for like watershed and overland management, and they will have that information.
Okay, I think it-
The two landfills that are accepting this are redoing special needs profiles for the acceptance.
We have talked with those landfills. I don't know, are any of the landfills represented here today?
I'm from Central Landfill, not
Okay.
Central, Clover Flat.
Okay.
And so we just, basically what you've asked us to do, like you talked on the phone,
Yes.
was to bring that application in that's been stamped and approved by them, and once that's in, then we take the turn.
And then you also asked for the asbestos, right?
Right, right. But we also have asbestos as well, so.
Did you ask for a profile as well on the soil and stuff like that?
No, we don't.
And your rates have already been determined?
Our rates are already posted on our website.
And what is the website?
It's our rates, our basic gate rates that we're charging. We haven't discounted our rates off or increased them, they're just the same rates. It's $80 a ton for disposal, $79.98.
Republic?
What is the regulatory body sort of
No,
policing
that's
this?
Clover Flat, Calistoga.
If there's, I was driving through Ninth Valley today, it's got no dust control, it's really bad, toxic stuff blowing all over the place. I'm not the type that really calls anyone out, but if it's really bad, who's the regulatory body? Is it Cal OSHA? Is it Cal Tribal? Is it the county? How's that gonna play out?
It actually falls to a bunch of different agencies. So, you know, like he was talking about, if you're knocking down a wall and it's creating a lot of air, a lot of debris and dust, then that would be air quality that's looking at that. As far as
County air quality or state air quality?
County.
it's
County.
county air quality, it's
Northern Air Pollution Control District, I believe is
yeah,
correct.
Northern Air Pollution Control District.
Northern something.
And then, you know, from a health, we can definitely provide advice with how to keep yourself safe and that. But definitely, I mean, you know, using those good practices, we've talked about PPE, you know, the personal protective equipment. If you're out there and it's a really windy day like today, and you've got crews out there, I would think about it a little bit. Do you really want your crews out there? Should they have masks on? What really should they be doing on a day that's so windy like today? I know just walking down Main Street here today, you've got leaves and such that are flying. That's probably not a day you want to be doing asbestos recovery or something.
Yes?
I have a question. When they came out and did the sweep on our house, they put white X's on certain things on our property. Are they coming to remove that, or what are the white X's for?
White X's means that they've cleared them. Typically, they'll do that on propane tanks. They'll relieve the gas in the tanks and then mark them with an X that says that they're safe and to use for recycling or whatever. But that means they've checked it and they've made it safe.
And what type, are they actually removing any type of debris when they do their sweep?
Just hazardous materials,
Okay.
actual hazardous materials.
No, I know.
If there is a flagrant, easy to remove transite pipe or something that's apparent, they will take that. Asbestos isn't, the asbestos tiles become flakes and they're hard to pick up, so they're not gonna take their time to do that. But any materials that they can take out, asbestos-wise, they'll take out. But if it's the tiles and whatnot, it's difficult and it'll take more time. But they'll take out Things, acetylene tanks, sometimes they're exposed but not burned. They'll take those out. They'll take batteries that are not completely burned. They'll take partially burned or mangled weed killer, things, paints, that type of thing is what they take out.
So they put an X on, you know, that it came through on my place on Sunday, and so what's a mark like that I can take to the recycle or to these specific
Correct.
places?
The mark means that they've been there, they looked at it, and they made it safe.
Well, I was just wondering, because on the application it says description of debris being removed and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I wrote down, and everything here has got an X on it, so that means I could take it there, but do I need to get
That's
a...
debris that you are taking off the site.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
so I'm trying to say, is just keep a receipt of that and then show the county that I did that?
Correct.
Yes.
And then also back to your question, like if they do find a large amount of asbestos or something like that, there would be a notification that would come to the health department, and we would be, then when you turn in an application for the second phase of this process, we would be able to talk to you about that at that time. I can see.
On the second phase, okay, so you do the first phase, you get the first one okayed, and then you go do the second one?
Yeah, the first part, which is the household hazardous waste.
Yeah.
And like they said, it's about, I think we're about 80% done with that process right now. There is an interactive map that's up on SoCo Emergency.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
And it's kind of a teal color that your property will turn when you've been cleared of that first piece.
Okay.
Hazardous waste. And then if you turn in your application with us prior to being cleared, we'll just hold your application, and as soon as we see it turn teal, then we'll issue your application. Any other questions?
One more, this came up, and talking to a homeowner, they were asking if they would be allowed to haul their hazardous materials to a landfill.
Hazardous materials need to be transported by a hazardous waste hauler. They cannot, unless, what is it, 5 gallons or less than 5 gallons? Is that what? Yes.
When you say hauled by a hazardous waste, on the previous fires, the county environmental issued tags to the individual truck body.
Correct.
They'll be doing that on this as well.
Yeah.
So all trucks have to be certified.
Any debris hauler does have to be permitted through Sonoma County. So if anybody's coming into the county that hasn't worked in the county before, they'll need to get a permit.
So as a homeowner, then we can't clean our own lot. That's what you're saying.
No,
Somebody else has to haul it.
As a homeowner, you can work as the general contractor.
So I'm just managing contractors.
Right, well, if you encounter hazardous waste, you're gonna have to have a hazardous waste contractor haul it down.
But if it's not hazardous waste, you can just put it in your own trailer and haul it off into the door.
And the debris, if you are a homeowner and you wanna haul your own debris, we can look into that. Because there is, in that code section, it's a professional debris hauler. That has to be permitted with Sonoma County. And so if you're just a personal and you're only hauling your own, we can look at that and we can work out something. So let us know.
And I have another question. What if you know exactly where the asbestos is? Can I meet up with these guys that are cleaning up right now and say, right there is a sheet of asbestos that is on the wall? Because it's a sheet, you can see how it across right where it was.
Defer to the
Well, the county is doing the first phase, and they have, with NRC, the contractor for the county, they have removed asbestos from some properties. But as I say, you're going to need a licensed, certified asbestos consultant to go through and clear your property. If you find it after the sweep is done, let's say it's underneath the building or was part of a chimney, you'll need to get an abatement company certified to address that before you go on with your main cleanup. And once that's addressed, it can perform, and the hazardous waste is cleared from the property, you can perform normal cleanup without, the HAZWOP and other things, as long as you're wearing your PPE, personal protective equipment, and following protocols that are set up as far as the wetting and the burrito wrapping and transport.
So for waste outside of the footprint of a home that was burned down, or property was burned down, things like fence, brush, yard debris, smoke damaged furniture and materials like that, is there going to be a permit required or an application required on those properties?
That's all
Any
considered,
restrictions on hauling?
no, that's all considered exempt materials. If you're doing an application, you could just include it in the regular application if there's a residence on the property. If not, like if there was a small structure, you can do an exemption, you can include it in there. But if it was, for instance, a parcel that just was a pasture land that just had fencing, then you can just qualify for an exemption.
It's a proposal.
So you do have to apply for it?
We
Even if it's a
normally,
harbor fence?
no, if it's just a wood fence, we normally don't even.
Well, especially if your home is burned down, you're gonna be taking any of that burn debris with your main home anyway, right, to the solid waste facility?
Yeah, but
Right.
these are properties that their homes weren't burned down.
This is just like
Just-
pasture land
yeah.
with a wood fence around it, and
Right.
the wood fence is burned.
Right, but-
Generally, we would just say it doesn't enter the program.
It generally doesn't, but if you're gonna haul it somewhere, you want the exemption so you can show the solid waste facility as part of the program, so when you bring it in for the disposal,
That's
they
true.
know it's been exempt.
That's true.
But, you know, that's just, there's no cost to it, you just fill out the certification form and, you know, we take a look at it and we verify that it's a fence and we approve that.
It's a much shorter process, it's a three-more page document, it's not even.
And the soils that we're scraping, those are considered hazardous?
Apparently.
They're impacted or contaminated.
Yeah.
And that requires a certified transport as well? So I can scrape my own soil, put it in garbage bags or burrito wraps that I can manage. Take it.
Just make sure you're wearing the proper PPE.
Just protect yourself from potential exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, especially. Crap on the truck.
Any other questions?
Just for clarity, on phase one, are you guys saying that the asbestos issue is being addressed during phase one at any point, or no? Because I'm just trying to be clear.
Partial, potentially partially. Only asbestos that is readily visible, that they can get to without crawling and hurting themselves. We're trying to do a quick sweep. It's ideal to have, after the sweep, is to have somebody who knows what they're looking for, verify that there's no more hazardous waste for your own sake.
Including asbestos?
Including asbestos,
Okay,
and
perfect.
they'll go out there, and
Yeah.
CAC, Certified Asbestos Contractor Consultant, will mark the areas that they're concerned that there might be asbestos. And those areas would have to be, those areas need to be removed by a certified contractor. But you need to make sure that somebody does that who knows what they're looking for before you have a contractor or yourself go out and actually move anything else.
And I'm asking it just for clarity so that professionals and the homeowners realize that you still have to do asbestos testing to clear it
Yes.
for residual fire ash, et cetera.
So if you're cleaning and you lift something up and there's a propane tank they didn't see, a hazardous person has to take care of that popped propane tank, that there can be nothing hazardous about it, and wetting yourself on it.
A propane tank that still has a valve on it.
Yeah, I don't have any of
If the valve is off,
that. I have a 500-gallon tank that's split. I'm glad nobody must.
I don't think there's any gas in it.
What's that?
I don't think there's any gas in it.
There's no gas in it.
That's the key, is if you
Just
want to
get
explode,
cut.
you don't want a piece of equipment picking something up, crushing it and exploding.
Paint can.
Paint cans,
If you, I mean, as a homeowner, finding a couple tin cans and that, you can take it to the household hazardous waste collection.
That's all there's
but
going to
not a garage full.
Not a
be. I
garage.
just want to make sure it doesn't turn into a.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're talking
This
about
is an
one
old
small.
place out in the mountains, and, I really don't want to turn this into.
Sounds like a park on this.
Because because I don't have.
The paper part.
Do you have another question?
Do you have a question?
Hey, did you have a question?
I think we got it answered.
Any other questions? I really thank all of you for coming today, and it's been, you know, I wish we were here under better circumstances, but please, if anybody ever has any questions, come see us here, give us a call. Hopefully all of you have that 565-6700 number, call that number, we'll call you back. Thank you all. And please, if you didn't sign in, make sure you sign in.
But they did.